only mode.
All right. Kishore, you have any question? You are right now muted from your end itself. If you have a question, because you've raised your hand, I'm asking you. All right. Yes, I'm going to mute all of you. In case you have any questions during this session, you could go ahead and raise your hand, and then we'd be able to go ahead and unmute you. You can ask your questions. All right. All right. This demonstration basically is for SAP HANA, and then we'll also be talking about business objects data services as well. All right. We'll try to understand what basically is the link between both of these major applications. All right. I'll try to give you a little idea of SAP HANA in this demonstration session and what we would be covering during this training. I'll also give you how business objects data services is linked with SAP HANA and what we would be covering during this training program. All right. Anytime during this demonstration, if you have any questions, make sure you go ahead and type it in the chat message, or you could go ahead and raise your hand, and I'd be able to unmute you so that we could have a discussion. All right. So any doubt, any questions, make sure you could ask. All right. All right, so for this session you will not have the organizer access, which means you will not be able to record the session. But in case you have any questions you could ask, the recorded session will be sent to your emails. I hope all of you have put in your right emails. You will be sent in the recorded session, you will be sent in the course content, the timelines and all that information necessary, your server details, all of that. All right, so just make sure you put in the right details. Sudhir Gupta, you have a question? Hello?
Yeah, this is Sudhir. I have a question. Are you going to cover SP09?
Yeah, we're going to just touch that. We don't have the SAP HANA Studio on SP9, but our course will run on SP9. We just need to upgrade the interface to SP9, and then we'll run it on SP9.
Okay, but we have a plan to discuss the features of SP09, right? In this demo.
In the continuation of our course during the training, SP9 has released very recently.
Right, I know.
So the course will run on SP9. Just need to upgrade. Right now we are on SP8 on the servers, so we'll upgrade it to SP9, and then our course will be running on SP9.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, because SP9 majorly involves a lot of cloud, HANA cloud information. All right. I don't know how many of you are from an SAP background, but I'm going from a very fundamental area, trying to give you a little idea about what SAP HANA is, how is it, how the roadmap is for HANA, what are the use cases that we have with SAP HANA. All right. Now this presentation basically talks about what we would be covering from the developer perspective, from an administrative perspective, and then I'd be talking about each of these topics as we go along, but I will be giving you a little idea about what SAP HANA is, and then we'll look at the server also a little bit, and then give you a feel of how this particular thing will look like. The SAP HANA basically stands for High Performance Analytical Appliance. All right, HANA stands for High Performance Analytical Appliance. The biggest difference between HANA and the rest of the databases is it is an in-memory database. All right, you would find that the normal databases we are storing it on a hard drive, but in SAP HANA we are storing the data on the RAM. All right, we're storing this in memory. All right, so we will try and understand this concept a little more in detail. All right, now the basic idea of, or the basic use case of HANA is being used as a database. all right? Just like how you have Oracle or SQL, HANA is also a database. But what SAP is trying to do is we're trying to go ahead and handle, we're taking the idea of in-memory and then we're trying to use that to generate real-time reporting. The processing is extremely fast with a HANA database, and so we're trying to use it at a level where we are able to generate real-time reports. Now, going to the board, we have, if you're looking at a landscape at any enterprise, all right, be it manufacturing, be it chemical, plastic, whatever. So basically we have two kinds of systems. All of you know that. One is the transaction system, the other one is the analytical system. On the transaction system level, in the SAP side, we call it as the ECC system. And in technical terms, we call that as an OLTP system, Online Transaction Processing System. This system basically is optimized for handling daily business processes. You have, let's say, finance or sales or inventory, any of these, quality, HR, all of these, you have users who use that, and you have interface. And when you log in and then you create data, that is stored in underlying tables. And this is basically a daily process that you do. You're selling something, you're buying something, and then money is coming through into the enterprise. So there's an outflow of money. So all of that is being tracked on this daily transaction processing system. Like any other server, there is also a limitation on this server based on the number of users who are using, the number of transactions that you're opening at a time, number of reports that you're running. All of these are considered, and then you have the basic configuration of this server design. Now, the downside of this system is this is not an optimized system for handling analytics. All right, you cannot go and generate reports on this. You can. You have standard transaction codes where you can go ahead and generate reports. But in case you want to customize your report, you want to modify that report to suit your or to your end user, it involves a lot of technical coding. All right, and all the coding that you do here to modify any kind of reports is using the technical language ABAP. All right, you need to have an end user probably might not know ABAP, or he might not be very technically skilled in coding. So in that case, that is a constraint that we have when you're generating reports. All right, so SAP came up with a solution for this. They came up with one system called as the BW environment. The BW environment basically is aimed at providing analytics, and this was primarily their OLAP system. All right, so to keep this system or the transaction system independent of the analytics part, what we need to do is whatever data is collected here in the daily business transactions, all of them need to be sent into the OLAP system, all right, which is also in regular terms called as BW in SAP. Now, it is an independent system. It doesn't really need only ECC system. Any transaction system can be used. It could be ECC, which is SAP's transaction processing system. It could be Oracle apps. It could be any other database, or it could be even flat files or web services. So BW is equipped to bring in data from any of these and then do your analytics inside the BW environment. So that's how it is kept independent. Now, another constraint is we do not want to put stress on the transaction processing system during the time of business processes. So what we are So what we are trying to do is, in case once the daily business transaction processes are complete, after that we go ahead and process our data into the BW environment. This is basically called as ETL. If any of you do not know what ETL is, it stands for extraction, transformation, and loading. The process of moving data from ECC. Now, any interface that you have, you will find that at the background there are always base tables. All right, and the data from these base tables are brought to the interface, or from the interface they go into the base tables. So when you do your ETL, which is extraction, transformation, and loading, you're bringing data from ECC, from the base tables, and you're pushing that data into the BW environment. You have to think, at this process, you have to think of two major things. One is, how are we bringing data from here, and how are we loading it into these objects. Now, if I go a little further on into this, you have something called as extractors. And then here you have objects which are from info cubes and DSOs and info objects and all of these. There are a lot of different objects in BW. I'm not going into detail about this. And you also can handle transformations inside BW if you want to write any business logic. So basically, you are trying to send all of this data in here. One thing you have to remember when you're using BW is that when you're using SAP extractors, the data usually here is linked, meaning let's say you have sales order. So your sales order basically has been divided into three major sections: header section, item section, and item overview. Sales header has a few tables connected to it, sales item has a few tables connected to it, and say item overview has another few more tables. Now when SAP designed an extractor, they basically gave that relationship between the tables that are linked. Like let's say your extractor for header is VBAK and VBUK tables. So they have linked those tables as a view, and then they have brought that data into out as an extractor. Similarly, when you're looking at item VBAP and VBUP, and then item overview information. So each one has a defined extractor that SAP has built already. And in case there is a Z table or a new table that is created, or you need a specific extractor, you could go ahead and build those extractors. All right. So that possibility is there when you're using with ECC. Now you have to remember this thing, that on the ECC front, let's say you're talking about finance, sales, HR, quality, or any other functional area, the schema for that is defined, meaning what tables are used, how data is going from the interface into these base tables is defined. All right. And when you're doing analytics, what you're doing is you are trying to bring that data that is related here into the BW environment, storing it in a cube or a DSO or a table, and you're trying to generate reports on top of that. When you're using BW, the constraint is that you're sending the data after your business hours. So the biggest challenge here is you are going to wait for your data for a minimum of 12 hours. So your business process is complete by, let's say, 6 or 7 maximum. You're starting your process of moving your data from ECC into BW by 8. By the morning, you have all your reports ready. But you're still looking at yesterday's data, not data as it is happening. That is the biggest challenge that BW has. All right. Now, what basically the HANA system aims at doing is it's trying to bridge this gap in between. Now, our decision makers at this time really cannot wait for data to be looked at tomorrow, right? We need the information as it is happening. You cannot wait for an entire 12 hours or 24 hours to make decisions. We want things, we want to see our reports as it is happening. We want to know whether we're losing, we're gaining. We want to make strategic decisions immediately, and then we want to go ahead and counter in case there are losses or improve on gains. That is what the whole point of doing business is. And so BW is not for customers or clients who are looking at strategic and data at an emergency level. All right. We need a system where we are able to process data at real time. In BW system, we are looking at information a day later. That is not what we want. We want to bring data at real time. We want to look at reports at real time. And HANA, which is a basic database, has been provided with a lot of server capability to process data at real time. All right. So this is basically the bridge, and one of the main reasons why they had to bring it HANA. The idea of using HANA, apart from being a database, is to bring data at real time. Alright, how do we achieve that is basically what we will be looking in today's session. Now here, when we have the SAP HANA box, the basic idea is to bridge the OLTP and the OLAP systems. Okay, let me just let's say this is the SAP HANA box. Okay. Now here what we're doing is we're sending data a little later, meaning we're sending data after your business process, and then you're reporting on these objects the next day morning. So you're losing on at least 12 hours to 24 hours. SAP HANA, on the other side, is a combination of hardware and software. Now HANA basically is a database, just like any other database like Oracle or SQL or anything. All right. You have, if you're looking at a Microsoft SQL Server database, if you want to go into that, you will have to go into Microsoft SQL Server Studio, and then you create a database and create tables and all that. On a similar front, the interface that you have for HANA is called as the HANA Studio. All right. On a similar lines, you have basically you can go and create schemas in there, and then you can create views. That's what you would be doing on HANA. But on the other side, how is this database able to process data at extreme speeds? This is a combination of hardware and software that you have with HANA. HANA can be used as a standalone database. It can also be used as an appliance. And what we have when we're looking at SAP, majority of times we see that on a warehousing projects we're using SAP HANA as an appliance. All right. An appliance is a completely capable system basically for processing data. It has a lot of different connections as well. We'll be talking about that too. But the basic idea about SAP HANA appliance is we are trying to bring data at real time to the end user for him to make the decision. All right. What we are able to see on a transaction system as it happens, we want to see that on the analytical system as well, and that is what HANA aims to do. Okay, in BW we are kind of bringing data as it is after a day, but here in HANA we're trying to report that changes immediately as it is happening in your transaction system. Now, HANA is a database. Like any database, you can only store data inside a database. You cannot generate data by itself. All right. So what we have here in HANA is also something similar. It cannot generate data by itself. You have to pump data into it. Whatever is the process that you're doing to load data into the BW environment, which is called as ETL, on a similar front, we are trying to do a similar mechanism when we're trying to bring data into HANA. You have a different naming here. We call that as data provisioning. Okay. These might be a little big jargons as that point, but as we go along during the course, we see that we keep using this jargon over and over again, so you get pretty familiar with that. Data provisioning is to provide HANA with data. Okay. If you think that you need to look at a report at real time from your transaction system, you need to bring the data related to that report into SAP HANA box. All right. In HANA, like I told you here, on the ECC front, you would find that data is on a schema. So when you are running a particular transaction code, you will find that data is being pushed onto an underlying set of data or underlying set of tables, and on the top of those tables there is a schema, and then that's how data is related in ECC. But when you want to look at a report at real time, not all reports are real-time reports. You have a few reports which you want to look at real time. Only those reports are being built on HANA, and so you need to understand what are the underlying tables that are used for those reports, and you need to bring those tables into the SAP HANA box. Now when you bring those tables into SAP HANA, now you understand that you're taking those tables out of the schema from here in ECC, and you're trying to bring that into HANA, and we're placing that in HANA. Okay, when we're placing that in HANA, these tables do not have any relationship. We're picking up tables as they are. Let's say I'm talking about the same sales area. Let's say VBAK, VBUK, VBAP, VBUP. These are all individual tables, and so you're bringing all these tables individually into SAP HANA. We know that we want to look at the open items, closed items, and all that. So we want to generate a report, and we want to look at this report at real time, which means that for us to generate that report, we need to bring all the base tables from there, and we need to relate these tables inside HANA. Because we're pulling them out of schema from ECC, we're bringing them into HANA, and we need to relate them in HANA. So the basic thing that we as developers do is we need to bring the data into HANA, and then we need to relate them inside the SAP HANA box. Now, this is a very transparent system, the SAP HANA Studio. The interface is developed by SAP. The software is developed by SAP, whereas the hardware is provided by SAP's partner vendors. I told you in the beginning that this is a combination of hardware and software, right? For this entire system to process the data at real time, it does not have a database. Everything is stored on the RAM. Now, a RAM is something where you have usually the cache that is stored, and the processes are basically done on the RAM. Now, the RAM of these servers are so big that the entire database of a landscape can be stored on the HANA server itself. Okay, on the server you have the RAM, all the data goes into the RAM. So you don't have specific database that you would be using in SAP HANA. And so it's a combination of hardware plus software. Okay. Now, in regular servers, what you have is you have a database, you have, again, application servers and all that we install, and then we run basic application on top of this. Now, HANA is a database. It has an interface called as HANA Studio, and to drive all of this, you have underlying the servers which are able to provide the power. Okay. These servers have their RAMs ranging from 128 GB to 4 TB RAMs. All right. So we're not talking about hard disks. We're talking about RAMs here. Okay. So the RAM capability is able to hold data up till 4 TB and even more. Okay. The software basically is trying to use this entire power that we have with the servers to be streamlined to bring data at real time for the end user. What we do here is we have different layers of how we build our objects. The basic idea is to bring these tables into the HANA box and then relate these tables to define, and these are called as views. Alright, so here Bala Dugi has a question here. He's saying, in case you're talking about sales tables in here, VBAK, VBUP, are we extracting the data from those tables? Absolutely. Whenever you're trying to use a system and you're trying to keep that independent of your transaction system, you can only keep it independent if you can bring all the data in here. We are not trying to use it as a logical system and try to use the data over that and use a virtual system here. We are bringing data, the entire data which is there on the transaction system into the HANA box. All right, and this comprises of using something called as data provisioning. So I'll come to that in a bit. The hardware and the software is what we're talking right now. The hardware basically is provided by SAP's partner vendors like Dell, Cisco, Fujitsu, and HP, and a lot of other servers are provided. Now, like I said, these are very highly configured servers, and the software is provided by SAP. The interface is called as HANA Studio. It has components like row stores and column stores, the concept is a little new. You have row stores and column stores for storing data. You have partitioning as a part of the data that is stored. You have aggregation that is built into the system. So a lot of the features you will have to just pick and use. You don't really have to do any kind of calculation. Now when you're using the database, okay, what you usually do is you have an application layer. You will bring the data from, let's say, the query or the reporting tool, wherever you're trying to calculate something. That query is brought to the application layer. You process that, whatever data is necessary for it, you fetch it from the database, bring it to the application layer, process that data. The result of it is sent to the reporting layer to execute it. Now here with SAP HANA, the entire application layer calculation is brought down onto the database. We would have looked at systems where there's something called as a push-down mechanism, right? Basically, if you have a very complicated query, you try to push it down onto the database. You're doing this for the entire system. So every query that is fired will be pushed down onto the database, meaning everything happens at the database level. All your calculations are happening at the database level. This enables you to save time to fetch data to the application layer. This allows you to do extremely fast calculations directly at the database layer. The application layer is kept free from too much of stress. What all you would be doing at the application layer is just process that data that is given from the calculation from the database and then just represent it at the presentation layer. That is all that you'd be doing at the application layer. All right. Now, this means that it is not that you are logically trying to bring the data or use the data from an ECC system on the HANA box. You need to fetch that data from ECC or any other transaction system. We need to bring that onto the HANA box. We physically have to bring the data in here. So there are 3 or 4 major ways as to how you would bring data into the HANA box. Okay. So here we have one method called as SLT, BODS. You have Sybase and you have DXC. So these are the 4 different data provisioning methods that you could use for bringing data into SAP HANA. All right. If you have to keep it independent of the transaction system, we need to move the data. Okay, and the whole point of using HANA is to process data at extreme speeds and also being able to provide the end user with data at real time, meaning something that's happening here has to happen immediately on the HANA box. So if you have a transaction created here, the data should be immediately passed on to the HANA box so that the report is up to date. That is the whole point of using HANA. Now, SLT means SAP's Landscape Transformation Server. Okay, this is a system that is used for basically fetching data from SAP systems into HANA at real time. Okay, so if there is a transaction that is happening, if you mention the tables that are there, you have a trigger process. It is mentioned to be at real time, so it will be waiting all the time to see if there is any transaction that's happening, any data that is being newly added onto this table. If it is added, immediately it will process that into HANA box. So it is immediately available in HANA. Sybase is basically used only for databases. Okay, again, there is a proprietary that SAP only installs the Sybase replication method or provisioning method, and so this is specific for SAP systems. Then you have business objects data services. Sybase also is a real-time replication, extremely fast, even faster than SLT. All right, it is also called as a log-based replication. The third option that you have is business objects data services. It is the only ETL tool that basically allows you to move data from SAP systems, database systems, web services, or flat files or any other systems into SAP HANA. Alright, so that is the advantage that Business Objects Data Services has. When you are processing data into the SAP HANA box, you want your data to be cleansed. You want to handle transformations outside so that the system doesn't try to waste time processing the data inside HANA. So for handling transformations and keeping it easy, trying to bring data from different heterogeneous systems, the Business Objects Data Services System, or ETL, is one of the most useful ways in bringing data to HANA. Okay, you will find that most of the enterprises have SLT and Business Objects Data Services, or they have either Business Objects Data Services. All right. The transaction transformation processing is very simple in BODS, and you will find also that it is able to, on a normal enterprise, it's not that you have only ECC for transaction processing. You might have data being stored in flat files, you might have data being stored in databases or applications, and data services is able to link to any other system and bring data from there. So the only downside for data services is this is not a real-time replication. This is called as near real-time replication. We bring that name because we try to process the data multiple times in a day so that your data is refreshed every time. Okay, so that is what data services is used for, moving the data from the transaction processing systems into SAP HANA. Okay. Now, once we move the data into HANA, you have a layer here called as the persistence layer. Now, if you are from a BW background, you will understand that there is something called as PSA here, persistent staging area. On a similar layer, here in SAP HANA, you have something called as persistence layer. Okay. The persistence layer is where you have the row stores and the column stores. What happens in here is you're loading the data into these individual, this is basically the RAM. Okay. Now, what happens here is when you are loading the data here, this is kept constant. You are not changing anything here. Let's say you bring in VBAK and VBUK. Okay. You will keep this constant. Okay. And this is loaded with data in case you have 100,000 records come through, you just keep adding it into these tables. On top of these is what you build your models. Okay. And these are called as views. We all are aware of what views are. Basically, these are defined based on one or more tables that are related. Either you define the relation by, let's say, different kinds of joins. All right. So you define those joins, let's say an inner join, an outer join, or you have relational joins or text joins. You go ahead and define these joins, and once you define these joins, it is not that we're going to use all the fields from the tables. VBAK has some 80 fields and VBUK has some 80 fields. You don't use all of these fields. You probably use some 20 or 30 fields from a combined VBAK and VBUK. But what happens is we waste a lot of resource trying to bring in all the data, 160 fields, and then we're trying to choose what exactly we want to use. Okay, so just a moment. Yeah, Ranjan Swami, you have a question?
Yeah. Can I ask?
Yeah, go ahead.
What is the DXC? You said maybe I skip it. What is that
Right.
DXC for?
DXC is direct extractor connection. This is using native BW on ECC to bring data into HANA. Now this is, I left it out on purpose basically because it needs a little background of BW. Now if you have a little idea with BW, you would know that there is something called as PSA, persistent staging area, on the BW. Now on a native ECC system, when you go ahead and type in the transaction code RSA1, it leads you to a native BW system on the ECC itself. So what happens when you have it on the native ECC system is, when you run your extractor, data goes to the PSA level. So if you have a BW system directly on the native ECC itself and you try to run an extractor, the data goes to the PSA level. So at the PSA level, you are replacing the database by a HANA database. So when you run your extractor, data goes into the HANA database, which is nothing but your PSA level. So that is the concept that is being used in DXC. It is not a very regular process, but it is used.
So is it only used if you are running, BW on your ECC, something like that?
It is in case you're having a ECC system and you don't, if you're not looking at real-time reporting, you're handling a little bit of transformation. So in those scenarios, you will use DXC.
And when you say extractors, what there exactly at the top, like in that box you wrote extractors from SAP. Does it mean that DXC? Do you refer to DXC?
No. On ECC, because SAP has been doing implementations of BW for the last 20-25 years, they've understood that when you try to do analysis of data, you need a few tables for sure. And so based on those tables, because you need that data, they have built an extractor. An extractor is nothing but a program which basically pumps out data from the ECC underlying tables into another system like BW. So when you trigger the extractor will suck the data from the tables and then push it into BW environment.
So if you have ECC, it's from SAP ECC, nothing to do with BW or any other system, right?
No.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, cool. All right. Yeah. So we're talking about this concept of views in SAP HANA. Now these tables are kept intact. We are not modifying anything on here. The views we are trying to build. Now I understand that VBAK and VBUK are related based on a document number or something. So I go ahead and define that relation and I choose, let's say, 20 fields from both of these tables together, which I think are the only fields that I'll ever use on my needed report. So I am actually bringing only those values in here. The unnecessary values I'm not trying to bring in. All right. So there are three major levels of objects that you build in here. One you call it as attributes, attribute view. The second is called as analytic view. And the third is called as the calculation view. These are the only three models that you have in SAP HANA. All of them are just like views, all are dependent on each other, meaning first you create an attribute view you use in analytic view you use in calculation view. Okay, but if you have an idea with BW, an attribute is similar to an info object, an analytic view is similar to an info cube, and a calculation view is similar to a multi-provider or an info set. Okay, so this is basic relationship. Is that you don't have multidimensional modeling here. This HANA database supports only star schema model. It doesn't support extended star schema. So any kind of change, we will do it on the model level, but the data that is there on the base tables will remain intact. You will be fetching the data, let's say by doing delta mechanism or something, you bring them into these tables, but the structure of these views will remain constant. So any kind of change that you want, and let's say depending on the kind of KPI that you need to generate, you will build a report and then you will use these different models to generate the report. All right. You also have a few other components called as decision tables. You have procedures. And you also have privileges. basically for maintaining that authorization for your objects. Well, there are different teams that will get involved on a HANA project. You will have people from SAP HANA developer side, you will have people from administration, you will have data services people, you will have business objects guys, you will have web app consultants and functional people. All of them will be involving in the project, and so you want to keep your data privileged. So you have privileges that you can create, like you write procedures on normal database function modules. You can write procedures here as well. Basically, they're used for reading from the existing underlying base tables. Okay, and then you also have decision tables. To modify your way of processing your data, you can involve a decision table as well. So these are some of the main features that you have inside the HANA box. Now, if I have to tell you that this has a database, BW has a database, this doesn't have a database, all of this data is there on the RAM, the first question you will have is what happens if my system snaps, or if my system shuts down, if my server goes down, what happens? Because if the RAM is there, then your system goes down, the entire data that is there on the RAM will be lost. So we need to find a way to keep that data available, or at least make sure that in case the system goes down, we need to bring that data immediately. Okay, and RAM is something like a data that is very volatile data, is not a permanent data. So in case you have some kind of system failure or something, you need to somehow have a backup of the data. It is volatile, meaning it can snap anytime. So you have secondary backups and data centers associated with the data stored on the RAM. You have hot backups and cold backups. So we'll be looking at those options as well. Now, we will also cover, as a part of our curriculum, we will be covering business objects data services as well. Business objects data services is basically an ETL tool. It handles a lot of transformations that are built into the system. So we can go ahead and use the transformation for modifying data before it is sent into HANA. We will learn it from a perspective of using a target system as HANA. We'll try to use different systems as sources, ECC systems, BW systems. We'll use databases, we'll use flat files, web services, and we'll push data into HANA and see how data can be scheduled to have almost real-time data inside HANA. We'll look at all the transformations that are there in data services for transforming data. Okay. We'll also see how to handle quality transformations inside data services. So this will be our second part of what we will be learning during this curriculum whenever there is. So the reason why we have that clubbed in is because as a HANA developer, your basic need is you need to understand how to use the views in here, how to write decision tables, procedures, and privileges. And basically at a warehousing level, this is what you will be looking. In case you're trying to build an application on top of HANA database, you will have to understand something like HTML. And one of the tools that you will use is Fiori to build an application on top of HANA. So we're not going into that aspect. So in case you need to build an app on top of HANA database, then that is the path that you would be taking. All right. So we will also look at one example where we talk about SAP HANA being used as an underlying database. Now, this is all the concept of using SAP HANA as an appliance. A situation where SAP HANA can be used as a database. Now, SAP's roadmap is to slowly monopolize the entire SAP area using only SAP products. All right. Right now, there is a very heavy dependency on the database level, which is majorly dominated by Oracle. And so we want to slowly bring out Oracle and use SAP's proprietary tools. And SAP's proprietary tool is the HANA database. So the idea is to use HANA as an underlying database for all applications. And one of the applications that we will be looking at during this process, we'll see how it is used as an underlying application, underlying database for the BW application. What will happen to the BW application when you're using SAP HANA as an underlying database? So when you're using it, the whole concept of BW system of extended star schema is going to change so that you will use only star schema modeling. There is no dimensional modeling anymore, and so we'll see how this basically allows you to make that change. As a developer, what are some of your roles, what you should be doing, how would you handle these migrations, and what are the changes in the architecture of the InfoCube DSOs. We'll also look at scenarios where we will need to bring these models of InfoCubes and DSOs and info objects from the BW environment into HANA Studio, and objects from the HANA Studio like the analytic views and the calculation views into the BW environment and create composite models and transient models inside BW environment. So we'll be looking at all of these scenarios in our training curriculum. All right. We'll also try to show you some features from the cloud. The SAP HANA Service Pack 9 is majorly concentrating on the SAP HANA cloud. I don't have the HANA Studio for SP9 yet, but we'll be having that in a day or two. All right. So we will be going through our curriculum on the HANA Service Pack 9 Studio. Then we'll be looking at any new changes that have been made on the studio level. Okay. So we will be covering the administration part as well, but that will not be in depth. That will basically be for developers who need to have an idea about how the administration is happening. What are the servers involved? What are the ports involved? What is the user level access that you need to have? Okay. And how does parallel writing happen when there are multiple people writing? How does backup and recovery happen? All of these we will be looking during this curriculum. Okay. Now, SAP HANA, to give you a little idea about the architecture of SAP HANA. The SAP HANA architecture is majorly divided into three major sections. Okay. It's basically a reiteration of what I have told you in there, but it has three layers. The first layer is the data provisioning layer. Okay. Then you have the in-memory computing engine. This is layer 2. And then you have the modeling section. This is layer 3. Okay. In the first section, which is called as the data provisioning layer, you are trying to bring in data from different sources. It could be BW, it could be ECC system, it could be database, web services, anything. Any client who wants to look at real-time reporting from his transaction system would want to use the data from the SAP HANA box, right? So that is what we'd want to do. So we need to bring the data from these systems into the SAP HANA box. Now here you have three major sections. One is this is called as the Sybase or real-time replication services. The second one is SLT or SAP's landscape transformation server, and the third one is data services. The real-time replication services basically are Sybase that we've seen that you would be using it for databases specifically installed by SAP. And this basically moves in logs from the database changes into the SAP HANA as transactions. So this is what you do at real-time replication. This is extremely fast. This is actually called as real-time replication. SLT is a replication that we use for SAP systems. Now from Service Pack 4 onwards or 5 onwards, they have also added new databases that SLT can handle, like SQL and Oracle and HANA database. You can replicate into the SAP HANA box using SLT. You don't see a lot of clients using SLT, but this is also possible by SLT. Data services is the only ETL tool that basically allows you to handle data from SAP and non-SAP systems. Not a real-time, but near real-time replication. Handles transformation at a very simplistic level. All right, so this is one of the primary use cases when you have replications. The second level is the in-memory computing engine, which basically consists of the calculation and the planning engine. The calculation engine that you see here is just not calculating arithmetic and data in here. Calculation engine basically talks about how the translation of code from these different reporting sections happen. Now, at the end, you don't see any of these systems in here. The end user doesn't have any idea about what is happening at the background. What he has is, he knows that he's able to look at the data, and he knows that the data that he's looking at is real time. All right, that is all that he has. Now, for an end user, when he fires a query, there should be some way that query has to be processed at extreme speeds, and the data that is required for that query needs to be brought to his interface at extreme speeds as well. The calculation engine, what you see in there, basically has a lot of different components in there. If you're firing a query from MDX or from a BIX or from an SQL, it needs to be converted to a native SQL on HANA, because HANA is a database. And so the calculation engine basically converts these or translates these into native SQL by parsing and then SQL execution. They have MDX translators, they have stored procedure translators, and all of these basically help in translating the queries that are fired from the reporting layer onto this. So the calculation engine is not just a calculation of is not just is not just a calculation of arithmetic, but it is also a calculation of how or translation of the queries. Okay. The planning engine that you have here in the in-memory computing engine is basically for all the financial applications that can be leveraged on top of HANA. Right? So you have the planning engine as well, so you could use that. You also have another block within the IMCE, which is in-memory computing engine, which is the row store and the column storage. Data is stored not just in row stores but also in column stores. I'll just show you an example. We'll talk about that in tomorrow's session a little more in detail. But let me just show you that example. Just give me one moment. Alright, so here you have, I hope you can see my screen. Guys, all of you are able to hear me clearly, or is it audible, not audible? Okay, so here is a snapshot of how the column storage works. Now on a normal database, what you have here is a table which has 4 columns: customer, country, product, and amount. let's say you're firing a query from, you want to see what is the amount that is for a customer 300. All right. So when you fire a query, what happens on normal row stores that you have like a SQL or an Oracle database is the system comes in here, looks for customer 100. It knows that this is not the customer we're looking for. We're looking for 300. It doesn't have the option to jump to the next row. It has to read through the entire row, come back to the second row, and then read through the entire row. It knows that this is not this a customer is looking for. Still read through the entire row, go back to the third row, look for the customer, read through. So finally, when it comes to the fourth row, it knows that this is the one. So this is the one that is displayed to the reporting layer. Now, we're talking about millions of rows. The amount of data that is handled on the HANA system is a huge amount of data. And so there is definitely some kind of time gap that will be found when you are looking at huge amounts of data and searching for a specific set of data. So there is a second storage mechanism called as column storage. The column storage basically aims at breaking down a table into individual columns, each column as a table. And these tables are indexed together so that you get the data once the search completes. Now here, if you're looking at a column store, column 1 is customer table, column 2 is country table, column 3 is product, and column 4 is amount. Now, when you're trying to read from a column store, when you look at, and you have only it doesn't have redundant data, only the distinct fields or rows are here in the column stores. So it comes in here, looks for 100, it doesn't find, it is not the one it's looking for, directly goes into 200, then 300. By the third iteration, you have your result, all right? You don't have to read through everything. So it links them through the index to the rows, and you get the result extremely fast. What I'm trying to say is this is the software from SAP, and they have two instances of storages, basically one for reading data and one for handling inserts, updates, and deletes. In case you want to do any operations of inserts, updates, and deletes, that is done on the row store, whereas in case you want to handle any kind of reads, that is done on the column store. All right. So all your reporting will be directly hitting the views of the column store, whereas all your reads that are happening will, all your inserts, updates, and deletes will be on the row store. You can choose what kind of storage you want to use for storing the data. We'll look at those options in tomorrow's session. So basically, this is basically the architecture of SAP HANA. It does not have a proprietary reporting tool. It uses a lot of different reporting tools that can be used on top of it, like business objects, enterprise reporting tools of Crystal, Excelsius, and dashboards, Webby, and then you can have Explorer analysis. You have MS Excel. You also have Lumira. All of these can be on top of that. Even your predictive analytics can also be leveraged on top of HANA. So this is basically the architecture and idea of SAP HANA with business objects, data services for moving data into HANA. So we will keep this open for questions right now. We'll be continuing on the topics again in tomorrow's session. We will be talking a little more on HANA and how data services links to it, what are the different versions that we have. So we'll be continuing that in tomorrow's session. So at this point, so whatever we have covered, you could ask questions. I have over 12 years of experience in the areas of BW, business objects, data services, HANA, and BW on top of HANA. So I'd be able to take your questions from any of these areas. All right. So this time is open for you guys in case you have any questions. Ranjan Swami, yes.
Hey, I have a quick question. I know you told it, but I still am a little confused. So what's the difference between, you said there are different types of data provisioning, like using SLT and using DXC. What's the difference?
SLT is basically a very simple interface. All right. All that you need to do is Firstly, if you know which tables are used, you can specify the trigger mechanism for individual tables, and there's an interface. You can go ahead and mention those tables and the trigger mechanism for those tables. And if you want a specific table, all that you need to do is put the table in there, search for the table, and you can press on load or replicate data moves in instantly. Okay. Whereas for DXC, this is built on a native, and this is specifically only for ECC systems, that you have the native BW on the NetWeaver stack, and then we bring that in there. This is not real-time. This is near real-time data. SLT is real-time data. Business Objects Data Services also is near real-time data. Sybase is real-time data. So these are the constraints that we have. It is not necessary that every customer has to use SLT or every customer needs to use DXC. Depending on their business process and the urgency of which they want to look at the data, they will use their data provisioning method.
So if you are on ACC, what makes, on what factor take a decision if you'll go for SLT or DXC? Is it like you want real time, then use SLT, otherwise DXC? If you don't want real time, is it like you need to use DXC, or what makes the
It is not
decision?
that. So all the data that you have is not real time. Some specific ones you want to use real time. In those scenarios, you will use SLT. And DXC is a very small use case. In case you have a grid of 100, you probably use 7 or 8% DXC. The rest of the time is shared between SLT, BODS, and Sybase. Sybase also is similar, 7 or 8%. You'd find at least 50% to 40% SLT and the remaining 50 to 40% as BODS, or even more than that. So the DXC is a use case scenario that came in very recently, right? That they could use a native BW on. It needs extracted data from ECC to be loaded to the PSA level of a BW system, and that PSA can be exchanged with a HANA database. So that is the basic concept. So it is not real time also. So the use case is a little less. SLT and BOD. So what we will do during training is we have an idea about all of these, and the end user will have a specific reason why they're using SLT or why they're using BODS. If let's say SLT because they have real time and they have a lot of ECC, CRM, SRM systems. That's the use case for SLT. In case you're using BODS, they'd say that I have databases as well, or I have web services that I'm bringing in. Or I want to handle transformation outside SAP HANA. In those scenarios, I want to use BODS. Right? So like that, you have individual use cases.
So in case of SLT, you cannot do any transformation, right?
You can handle transformations, but you need a technical knowledge on ABAP, because your transformations are handled at the include programs in ABAP, and these are linked to a few tables. So you need to understand.
And what about on DXC if you want transformation and some kind of,
you could do it.
the data?
Yeah, you could do it. Yeah.
Okay, and as part of this training, how much percent you'll be covering on BW? Or it's very few or basics. If I don't have any background of BW.
We will talk about how to create info objects. We will talk about how to create info cubes, DSOs, multi-providers, info sets. We will talk about the extended star schema, because this is the area and these are the objects that will be hit by changing the underlying database from an Oracle to HANA database. Okay, so we'll see how this is going to change when you're using BW and BW on HANA.
So after this training, if I take this course, can I work in a project as a HANA modeler or whatever in a scenario when BW sits on HANA? Can I work on that?
Yes.
Okay. And as part of the course, will you be helping for certification, or
the conversion rate on my trainings is almost over 95% and above. All my students are certified. They have at least 93 and above percentile when they give the certifications. We provide.
So what kind of certification they give? I heard there are two. One is HANA, one is BW on HANA, right? Something like that.
So there is the two. When you are learning, it's more like a application level and a basic level of HANA certification. Then there is administrator level as well. All right. So there are 2 levels of certifications.
Okay, so is it like, okay, that's good. Okay.
We'll be providing material for all of them. We will, at the end of this curriculum, we will be discussing at least 3 certification papers, and then we'll try to answer all of them, so that will be a revision for us, and also we'll try to recollect what all we have done so far. All right.
Okay. And how many hours will be the training?
We'll be looking at least 40 to 45 hours.
So 45 hours, I mean, and of course the server access will be provided for a month or 2 months, whatever. Right?
2 months, 2 months, yes.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Cool. Shahid Al-Latif.
Yeah, hi. I just have a question. If I can think of something out later on, is it possible I can get your email address, please?
I'm sorry, your voice is not too clear.
Yeah, I wrote down the question.
Okay. You want my email address, you ask? I don't know.
Yes, please.
Yeah, I'll mention that at the end of the session.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, one moment. CR.
Hello.
Yeah, hello.
I have a question for you. So this HANA has been into this market since year 2009, and it's been 5 years. So I was just wondering how HANA is doing in the market. I haven't heard many job openings or many things about HANA out there.
All right. let me give you this idea. Now, SAP expected HANA to be doing extremely well in the market when it opened. All right, there was a lot of buzz about how HANA is going to change the world and all of that. Okay, but when it actually hit the systems, it did not work like they expected. There weren't a lot of companies opting for HANA. There were very few implementations, probably 150 to 200 implementations that started off. But now you will find that pretty much every company, every enterprise is slowly moving to HANA. The reason for that is SAP has made it pretty much mandatory by 2016 or 2015 roadmap that everybody will be on SAP HANA database. We'll talk about the roadmap of SAP HANA in tomorrow's session, where we will see that the roadmap for SAP is that they want to monopolize the market without using Oracle in its applications. So they would want to have HANA as an underlying database across the enterprise. All the applications that they use will only use SAP HANA. It becomes mandatory for every enterprise to know SAP HANA and use SAP HANA. So you will definitely see that there are a lot of openings. It's not that there are not openings, there are a lot of openings. You will find that they usually iterate on multiple skills. You need to have a developer skill, you need to have an ETL skill, or you need to have a developer skill and also a business object skill. So it's not just a HANA developer that you're always. They usually link it with some other skill as well.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, guys? Okay, I'm going to read this out from Bala. We are bringing the data from VBAK or VBAK from ECC to HANA. Tables, any using SLT or BODS, will it be any performance issue in HANA or ECC since all the transactions are updating in the base tables during that time we are extracting? Alright, so here we're not hitting on any of the performance issues when we are extracting data from the ECC system. That part is left intact. as far as the Sybase replication server goes, what is the license type you need to acquire in order to replicate from Oracle to HANA? Does that license cover CDC setup to Q? The Sybase replication, you have something called as ECDA. You need to get that license done. So you have different packages. Now, if you are an SAP customer, existing SAP customer, then that will be for a lesser price. But in case you are not an SAP existing customer, then you will have to buy the entire set. They don't let you buy just the Sybase licenses. They ask you to buy Sybase, BODS, and SLT licenses together. So it is clubbed all together for a non-SAP customer. If you are an existing customer, you can go ahead and buy just that license. CDC is a part of the setup, so it comes along, yes. Wally, that is for you. Any other questions, guys? Yeah. So the curriculum will be sent to you. Ranjan?
A quick question. That SP09, is that the latest service pack, right?
Yeah, it has just hit the market.
So when, this month? I mean, October,
Yes.
November?
Yes.
Okay.
November.
Oh, so the practice server will be what, SP08 or SP09?
We are right now on SP08. We'll upgrade
Okay.
that to SP09.
So we'll be practicing on maybe SP09 or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Is it a major difference, because they keep on releasing the service pack? So
They
is it a
increase
big
the
difference or?
So they increase the functionality. There won't be a lot of change on it, but if you're, let's say, somebody who's building an application on top of HANA, when you're using HANA Cloud or something, then there'll be quite some change. But yeah.
Yeah, if a company, for example, our company is running on Service Pack 8 and tomorrow they release 9, is it like you need to
No.
upgrade?
It is not. See, it is available for upgrade so that your functionality that you're using on SP8 will remain intact. It will not hit the Service Pack 9. So when let's say you upgrade it to an SP9, whatever code you have built on SP8 will still stay same.
Okay, and what about the BODS? You said 4.2. Is that the latest version of BODS?
Yes.
Or?
Yes.
Okay. And the other question is, can HANA? I mean, it's little out of base. So can HANA sit on can SAP ECC sit on HANA, right?
Yes.
I mean, say you don't have BW and a company wants to put HANA. So they are running, for example, on CRM or ECC, whatever. So ECC can sit on
yes.
directly on HANA, right?
Yeah, they have that already released.
So what are the other? I mean, is it from a Service Pack 8 or it's from the beginning or?
No. You could migrate from an existing Oracle database to a HANA database. So on ECC 6 and above, after Service Pack 19, I think you can go ahead and you could go and migrate the database, or you can install a new database.
Service Pack what you said? 19?
I am not too sure the number. I don't want to give you a ballpark number.
So there could be two instances. Like say, if my company is running on ECC and they don't have HANA, they want to have HANA, it can sit on top of HANA. Or if my company there ECC and BW is there, they can also make BW on top of HANA, right?
Yes.
Is there any other scenario, which can sit on HANA, something like that?
The whole point of SAP is to bring all applications on top of HANA, SRM, CRM, XI, PI, all databases, even data services. Now we want to install it on HANA database. That's the whole aim, so that you practically bring out Oracle or any other databases from the enterprise.
So the backend of ECC will be the database will be HANA. That's what the aim you're telling, right?
Yes, yes.
How many total implementations of HANA happened? I mean, kind of roughly, just for knowledge.
There have been quite a few implementations. I will give you a ballpoint number probably tomorrow, not...
Sure.
Yeah, I don't want to take a guess.
No, that's fine. That's fine. Okay, thank you.
All right, so if you have any questions or you want to talk about anything relating to course fees or timelines or server access or anything, you could contact ERP Extreme. They would be able to suggest you, or you could have my email address from them. I'd be able to talk to you as well. All right. All right, guys. Just a moment. Any other questions? As we have the session starting at the same time tomorrow, all right. So we'd be looking a little into the architecture of SAP HANA and how we're going to look at the roadmap of how SAP wants to place HANA as a database and also as an appliance. We will have a little time trying to look at the interface. Today it was a little late, so I could not show you the interface. So tomorrow we'll be doing that. All right. So I hope to see all of you in tomorrow's session, same time. Right. All right, Shahid. I see your email address as shahidlatif@email.com. Is that correct? All right. All right, guys. So take care. I will see you around tomorrow. And yeah, thanks for your time, guys. Thank you so much. Take care and bye-bye.